This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll get one more.
And welcome to the first ever Spec Tales podcast. I am your host, Jake, with your other host, Jesùs.
What's going on, buddy?
And you are listening to the first ever podcast. This is the first time I've ever recorded a podcast, so it's probably going to be terrible from my end, but Jesùs is a seasoned pro, so hopefully he brings up the team here. Jesùs, what do you got?
Seasoned pro as in amateur. So yeah, I've done a few, but I wouldn't say I'm a pro, man. Not by any stretch.
Well, you've got more experience than me, so this podcast it's Spec Tales, and this is a comic book podcast. If you're here, hopefully that's because you like comic books, you like talking about them, you like talking speculation. We're going to be doing grail tales. Every comic book has a story, and so does every collector. So we'll be kind of bringing on guests. We'll be getting people to tell us, a story about a comic book. Some of them are going to have a happy ending. Some of them are not. Jesùs has a tale today that I don't know the ending to, but I don't think it's a happy ending. So we'll see how that ends up. And then we're going to talk straight to comic book conspiracy theories. What books do we think are going to pop off? Which ones are we going to, which ones should you sell? Which ones should you buy and keep for the next 30 years? And then everything else comics, right? So if it's the MCU, if it's the DC universe, we're going to go over it if we know anything about it. Jesùs, you may need to pull up the the team here on that as well. I only have so much DC knowledge. But anyway, thanks for joining. And we're just kind of going to jump in. So Jesùs, you've got a story to tell.
Yeah, man, I've been holding on to this. Has been percolating, simmering, if you will. Like you mentioned, every comic has a story, and every collector does as well. So this is mine. This is my story. This is a grail story. Not all stories have grails, but this is a grail. And we've talked about this in the past, that there's certain books that you kind of elevate to a grail. That's Amazing Fantasy 15. Or Incredible Hulk number 1.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're the A-list, right? Like, they're the books that are, whatever. They're higher than everything else, right? Like, it doesn't matter, even if we're talking Marvel Spotlight 5, Amazing Fantasy 15, Fantastic Four number 1. They're just some books that are just going to be in that next echelon of comic book.
Yeah, the very top tier, the Everest, if you will. And this is a story about Fantastic Four number 1, the first appearance of the Fantastic Four, the first Marvel team up, kind of a book that started it all, as they say, for the most part, and how it was in my grasp for all of, I owned it probably for a good, I want to say 6 hours, maybe at that point. So what does that mean?
You would text me. I remember you texted me with the photo, and I was like, "No way!" So I got a good story though for everybody. Okay, so I have not heard this story. I don't know what's going to happen. So honest reaction on my end here.
Man, if you like twists and turns, man, buckle your seatbelts, because this is gonna be a bumpy ride for sure. So it starts out with so there's this guy that I've bought books before here locally. I'm in Houston, as you can see by my hat, or those that can't see, obviously we're on a podcast. But is locally here to Houston. I bought from him in the past. I want to say the past 6 months. I bought a Department of Truth number 1 secret variant with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah,
and then the Department of Truth number 2, the Baby Eater variant. So I bought those. I think it was a fair deal for both of us. I didn't feel I got the best deal, and he didn't feel he got the most out of it. And we met at a local comic shop here. He's my presser, and he was there selling some books to him, and he sold those to me. So I thought we had a pretty good relationship. So out of the blue, he messages me on Instagram, and he asks me first, because I have a bunch of books. He asked me if I had the sketch variant for Stray Dogs #1, which is a hot book right now because of that thing that I mentioned to you, which is the writer or artist is doing sketch variants of people's pets on that blanks, and that's what people wanted.
Which is a brilliant idea, by the way.
Yeah,
that's
fantastic. It's really cool. It's way different. It's meta. It's pretty awesome. So he wanted that sketch variant, and he's like, I may have something to trade you for it. And I'm like, that the variant at the time is going for about $100. Yeah. And so he sends me this picture, and I'm like, I'll do trades. I don't mind. And I look at it, and I'm like, wait a second. Is that what I think it is? And sure enough, it was Fantastic Four #1. And obviously, it's not worth $100, right? It's slightly more, Yeah. And so I think I reached out to you, and I said, hey, because I didn't have the sketch variant, and I knew you were on Stray Dogs, and like, hey man, do you have the sketch variant? Because this could. I
didn't grab the sketch. I got the A and B covers, which the B covers, by the way, for all of the books, those Stray Dog books, fantastic.
Yeah, man. I'm about to pay through the nose for the Silence of the Lamb ones, because I really like that one. I liked it from the beginning. I just didn't get onto Stray Dogs. You told me the story and I liked it. It's a good
story. Yeah. And it's well written. And that Silence of the Lamb book, just so you know, I got mine for a cover price.
I just want to throw that out there. You just want to sneak it in. I see. So he tells me, so I'm like, man, is this really going to be a sketch variant? I will buy that sketch variant from anybody right now to facilitate a trade. And obviously, I'm not thinking that that's going to happen. But at the very least, if I can sell him the sketch variant, it's going to grease the wheels for this next deal, which is going to be Fantastic Four #1. So I just told him, I don't have the sketch variant, but if you're looking to sell, let me know. And that was like, let's say that was like a Monday. So Wednesday, his new comic book day, he messaged me again. He's like, hey man, I'm going up there. If you want to take a look at them. I go, are you selling? He's like, probably. So I'm like, okay. So probably. I go up there and, he's there. I get there and I'm looking at him. And so it's not only Fantastic Four #1, it's Fantastic Four #4, which is the first Silver Age appearance of
Namor,
the Submariner. Yeah. And it's Fantastic Four I think 21, which is the first appearance of the Hate Monger, which is not, it's not a huge key, but it's still cool. It's always been a cool book to me. It looks, they put him as a hate monger, but it's obviously a reference to the KKK with the little pointy hat or whatever. So,
yeah, but this guy's packaging all three of these books together.
He's packaging all three of these books together. He wants to sell them all three. And when he's there, he didn't notice me come in. So he was talking to the owner of the store, which is a buddy of both of ours. And they're just talking. I'm overhearing the conversation. And, he's kind of saying he doesn't want to sell #1, that he only wants to sell #4 and #21, which I would probably buy #4, but if #1's there, I'm gonna buy #1. So we end up sitting down. I take a look at him. #1 is not in the greatest shape. I would say it's like a 1.8, maybe a 2.0. If I get lucky, it's maybe a 2.5. Staples are still attached, but you can see the picture. I sent you the picture of it.
Yep.
And it has writing on the top, which is like A17. And it's in pencil, and then somebody went over it in a red pen, which now looks neon, which is crazy. So you can't take that stuff off, but it's still a grail, man. This is a grail book.
That's a grail at any grade.
Yeah, so we're talking, and I'm trying to see where he's at. He doesn't want to give me a price. So real quick, #4 is in better shape. I would say it's probably 3.0, maybe 3.5, but it's really brown. It's probably, foxing. It's just a brown cover at this point, but it's still, I'd still want it, at this point.
It's another grail. It is certainly not a top tier grail, but first Submariner, Silver Age Submariner. There's a lot of people that will want that book.
Yeah, and this
and
was
these are old books. They're old books, right? I mean, what's Fantastic Four #1? It's at 63.
63, yeah, and so number 4 was 64, I think. So it's right after it. They're old books. They smelled old. I got to hold them. I took them out of the plastic. Got to hold them and smell them. The whole nine with these deals. And at that point, I think they had just cast Namor. So it was also, beginning to be a hot book, but not overly hot. So he doesn't want to tell me the price. He doesn't want to tell me. He wants me to make a deal. He wants me to make an offer. He wants me to basically hang myself and do an outlandish number. So I'm conservative, and I offer him for both of those books. Actually, for all 3 of those books, I offered him $5,000. I said, I'll give you $5,000 for these books right now. And he said, okay, well, I don't know. I don't want to sell #1. I'll let you know. Like, he started backing off right away. I don't know. I don't want, I don't want to sell #1. I go, well, I'm not going to buy. At that point, I was kind of getting upset because, a second ago he was, and then now when I say something he doesn't want to, not #1, he just wants to sell #4 now and #21. Like, all right, man, well, I'm not going to make a deal with that #1. If you don't want it, that's okay. I understand, man. It's not a big deal. I've said no to many other books in the past, so I definitely want this book. But if not, it is what it is. So he says, all right, well, I'll let you know. So I get there, and it's New Comic Book Day, so I'm picking up New House on the Lake and all these other books that I'm picking up. I'm talking to the owner, going back and forth, and he's just hanging around. He's just hanging around. So I end up paying for all my stuff, and he's still there, and I leave. And so I leave. I think I messaged you. I think I called my wife, and I told her, man, it didn't happen. And as I'm on my way home, because this local comic shop is not that close, it's probably like 40 minutes away from me, he calls me. And bear in mind, he doesn't have my phone number. So he calls me, and he's like, hey, man, I thought about it. I'll sell it to you. I'll sell them to you for $5. And I said,
all of them.
I said, okay. So you're going to sell them to me for $5? He goes, yeah, we got a deal. And I was like, and I found out more later, which I'll go back and I'll tell more of what happened, because I got it from my friend, which is the comic shop owner.
Is that how we got your number? He got it from him.
Yeah, he got it from him. So he calls me. He's like, I'll sell it to you for. I go, okay. I go, that's perfect. And actually, you know what? It was July 5th because that's when banks were closed, so I couldn't go get the cash. And I said, look, man, the banks are closed. I can Venmo you some money right now, and then I can get the rest of you cash tomorrow, and I'll meet you back at the place, and I'll give you the money. And he's like, oh, yeah, man, that sounds great, man. That's perfect. That's going to help me out a lot. I said, okay, cool. That sounds like a plan. He's like, but I just want the cash. So just bring the cash tomorrow back to the comic shop, and we'll make the deal there. And I was like, perfect, man. That's awesome, dude. Thank you. So I was like, oh, man, it worked out. I got this grail. I got Fantastic Four #1. I want to press it and clean it. I might not even sell it because it's such a hard book to get, man. It's just such a hard book to get. You don't see it in the wild. This is, in all my years collecting, this is the first time I've ever seen one that's been raw and up for sale, like that I was able to hold in my hands. That's not on eBay or not at a con or whatever. It's just, something organic, I felt.
Yeah,
So,
we've talked about this before. Sometimes, I mean, it's so hard to turn a book down when you actually can hold it in your hands. Yeah. And it's something as rare as that, where, the like the story of the ASM 300 that I got, that I know you've heard the story now, I don't know how many times, but I'd never seen one in person. Now, I mean, you see them, but I'd never seen a raw one. I walked into my LCS and it was just sitting right there. And at that point, there's no turning back. Like, I was like, all right, I got to get that book. So there's definitely something about having that grail or just that book right in front of you.
Yeah, that book
hard to say no.
Man.
Yeah,
for sure, man. Those books convert you. There's certain books, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like ASM 300 is one of those books as well. Like, you can have an ASM 361 up there. It's not the same feeling. 300 is iconic. We've talked about a lot of the reasons why, but Fantastic Four #1. I mean, even Hulk 181 is like that. Once it's in your hands, you're kind of like, I need to get this book, kind of deal.
Which is crazy because there are so many copies of those books, ASM 300 and Hulk 181. But that's why I still put, Fantastic Four #1. It's just in another tier. It's another level above all of those books.
Yeah.
Even Hulk 181, because there's just not very many of them.
Man, and it smelled, old, and it's just, it had a lot of character, man.
There's a lot of books, though, that smell old, and they're not even that old. It just depends on whose basement they've been sitting in for the last 5 years.
That's true. So it's seen some things for sure, man. It's a good copy. It's seen some things. It's well worn, well read. So on the way home, I'm happy and ecstatic. I'm driving home. I get home. I tell my wife, and I have to tell her, the wrong way. Like, it was for $15,000, and he said no. But what do you think if I get it for $5,000? You think that's a good deal? And you hit him with the negative, the outlandish numbers first, and then you hit him with the lower number, and she's like, "Oh yeah, for $5,000 you should have done it." I go, "Okay," because I did it for $5,000, and I showed her
ease into it with the wife.
and by this time I had already showed her all the comps on eBay, and look what number 4 is doing now. Like, I could have probably sold 4 and made up the money and just kept number 1, and I would have been even, and I would have had a number 1, a Fantastic Four number 1. And so I'm happy. So this is again like at noon or 2 or 1 or 2 by the time I get back on July 5th. So by like 5 or 6 o'clock, my phone is buzzing and I'm getting messages. And keep in mind, he can't call me, right, to make the deal. So now he's sending me messages, and he says, it was probably closer to 7, man. It was probably later on. And he says, "Hey man, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sell them to you. I talked to my family. My family said they're willing to pay for the grading and the cleaning and the pressing fees. So I'm not going to sell it to you, man. Sorry." And so I'm crushed, dude. I'm crushed at this point. What did I do? What did I do wrong? So I respond and I'm like, "Hey man, what happened, dude? Like, I'm already, moving the money around. I'm going to take it out tomorrow morning. You'll have your money by noon in cash. You don't have to worry about this, And it's true too. Like he doesn't grade books. He doesn't know about any of that stuff. He's not a collector like me and you are. Like we're constantly grading stuff. We're trying to figure out pressing, like all that stuff. He's not like that at all. And I'm telling him like it's going to be a pretty penny because it's based on percentages on those books, like on their value. And he doesn't respond.
He could spend over $1,000 just grading those 3 books.
Yeah, and he doesn't respond though. He doesn't respond at all. I know he saw it. He saw the message, and he doesn't respond. Yeah. So he just stopped responding. He just cut me off at that point. And so I messaged him again. I go, "Hey man, I go, look, if you sleep on it, you change your mind, I'm ready. You have your cash this afternoon. Yeah. I mean tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning."
It's seller's remorse. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, man, that sucks. So I call my buddy, right? I call him, and the shop owner, and he's like, "Yeah, man, when you left, he was trying to sell them to me." And I said, "I wouldn't go over 4. And so he's like,
was he trying to help you? Was your buddy, the shop owner, trying to help you?
No. I mean, he's my buddy, but he's in business for himself. And if he got him for 4, I'd be okay. Like, okay, the guy could have gotten a 5, but he sold him to him for 4, whatever.
But you said, you could potentially have just sold number 4 for almost and almost made your money back.
Yeah, for sure. And so he was offering him 4. He didn't know what I offered him.
Okay.
So he was just saying, I just offered him 4. And when he said no, he's like, "All right, well, he offered me 5." He goes, "That's when I knew you offered him 5. And I didn't want to go up to 5. So I gave him your phone number, and that's when he called you."
Okay.
And he's like, but he goes, "But 5 is kind of high, don't you think?" I go, "Nah, it's not. Like, it's not high. It's not high at all, man."
Man, I don't think so. I think that number 1 alone could be worth 5.
Oh, dude, it's worth probably like 7 or 8, man, for sure. At least if you grade it, once you grade it.
Depends on how low it grades, right? Like if it's a 0.5, then you're not.
Even if it's a 0.5, look at ASM 15. What a 0.5 is doing right now. It's like $15,000, dude, for like a 0.5 or something crazy like that. So that's what I'm saying, man. And that's once they announce it, it's gonna go.
Once they cast these characters, once you see a trailer, the book's gonna explode even more so.
Yeah, so that's what it was. So he tells me that, and I said, "Well, dude, he's not. He told him to me, and now he's saying he doesn't want to sell him." He goes, yeah, man, that guy's kind of fishy, man. Like and I go, fishy? He goes, I don't know. He goes, he's wishy-washy. That's what he said. He's wishy-washy. And I was like, so I'm not gonna get him, huh? He's like, probably not. And I'm like, all right, dude. And then he tells me the story. So this is where it gets even crazier. So he's like, he's being greedy. He tells me he's being. I go, how's he being greedy? He's like, oh, he didn't tell you how much he got him for? I'm like, no, he didn't tell me how much he got him for. I go, I don't really care. Like, whatever. If he's like, he got him for $50.
No way.
And I said, what? He goes, yeah, he got him for $50 on Friday. So this is Monday the 5th. He got him on the 2nd for $50. So check out what happened. This is a story from my buddy about how this guy got a Fantastic Four number 1, number 4, and number 21.
Wait, this is a grail tale within a grail tale. Holy cow. Okay, so keep going.
It's a grail inception, grailception, if you will. So he goes to another local comic shop. That's about 20 minutes away from the one we're talking about. And he's there. There's a guy trying to sell some of his books to the store. The store owner's not there, so he has his hourly workers there who are not versed in comic books. They're versed in sports cards or Magic the Gathering cards. There's just in cards.
There's an LCS near me that, depending on what night you show up, you're either talking to a Magic the Gathering person who knows nothing about the comic books whatsoever, or vice versa. And and it drives me nuts. Honestly, sometimes I just can't go in there because you'll ask a question or you want to know about new inventory, and they have no idea. They don't even know how to research it.
So it was 2 guys, and both of them didn't know. And so they told this older gentleman, and by older, I'm talking about 70s, that we can't buy these books from you because we don't know, and we would get in trouble. So if you want to come back tomorrow when the owner's here, he'll give you an offer. Well, our guy hears that and says, hey, man, I'll buy some books from you. What books are you selling? And this guy takes out Fantastic Four number 1, X-Men number 1, Fantastic Four number 4, Fantastic Four number 21. Those 4 books he takes out.
Oh, my God.
And this guy...
You're kidding me.
No, and this guy goes, well, I don't really want to sell the X-Men one because I kind of like the X-Men still. Because I'm going to sell it eventually, but I just want to sell these. He's like, they're not in the greatest shape. So the guy, the guy who's trying to sell it to me tells him, well, what do you want for them? And he goes, since they're not in good shape, give me $50 for them. And the guy goes, okay, I'll give you $50 for them. And he's like, I wanted the X-Men one, but I didn't want to push my luck, so I just gave him the $50. I grabbed the books and I left. And that was it.
Oh my God. That's like stealing.
So that's exactly what my buddy, the comic book owner, the shop owner said. He's like, man, this guy stole from him. He robbed him basically. $50, dude. He goes, and then he's being greedy with $5,000 in 3 days. He's like, he goes, morally, dude. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I don't even know what to say about that.
That is borderline elderly abuse. Like, okay. that is blowing my mind that he could do that too. Like, I don't know. Like, everybody wants that garage sale, right? You walk into it and the garage sale has that, box of old comics, and you flip it up and, the little old lady's like, oh, my oldest son used to collect. And, you want that, right? And you want each one. She's got them listed as like $0.25 a pop, and you want to be the guy that finds that box of grails. But you also think to yourself, man, would I be the person that was honest with this individual who has no idea what they have and say, these are worth a little bit more, and at least try to, do something, right? Like, he could have. Yeah. Well, I don't know what the right thing to do in that case is, because it's also not their job to price the book for the person.
Yeah,
and that just seems, sickening.
Well, when I heard about it, I was upset even more, because I'm like, man, this guy turned away $5,000 when he bought him for $50. And one of the things to say too is, I'm fortunate enough to be able to say I could buy them for $5,000, but this guy that I was trying to buy him from, I don't think he had. That's why he sold me those books back before the Department of Truth books. He didn't want to sell them, but he needed money to fix his vehicle. So this guy, you know, from what I gathered too in our conversation, you know, he's been a little down in the dumps this past year and stuff like that. So I don't think he would have been able to pay for more than even close to what their retail value would be. So, you know, it is what it is at this point. You know, that's what he chose to do and what he has to live with. Okay, so that's
okay. So where are we at? So now we've got. So you missed out on the Grail, one of the holiest of holy grails. You miss out on that. You miss out on the first Silver Age Submariner, and then Fantastic Four 21, which was just a throw-out book. Mm-hmm. But then you find out that he got these things for $50, which is still blowing my mind. Mm-hmm. And the story's done. That's where it ends.
At that point, that's where it ended, man. And I was like, man, this sucks. You know, it is what it is. And then this past weekend was Comic Palooza, right? So it's the biggest convention here in Houston. Big deal. So, you know, I go there and I have my little list of what I'm going to do. And I'm just passing by. And the biggest local comic shop here is Bedrock City Comics, right? And Bedrock City Comics is like your Walmart, your McDonald's. We just picked this up this morning. And I'm like, oh, okay. So again, at this point, I still don't know. Could be a coincidence, but
it is not. No, it is not.
But I look at the book, man. I look at the book, and I'm like, man, this is awfully familiar. And guess what it had at the top of the page? It had the A and the 1 and the 7.
It was the book. It had the mark.
It had the mark that was done in pencil, that was put over with red pen.
That looked neon.
Books. That looked like neon. These were the books, man. So this guy goes and he sells it to the Walmart of comic books here in Houston. And if I'm being honest, he probably got less than what I offered him, if I'm being honest. If I'm just being honest, and the conversation I had, so there's more to it as well. So the Bedrock was asking $4,500 for number 1. And they were asking, I think it's $2,700 for number 4. So if you put that two together, that's what, 55, 65, what, 60, no, 65, 7,200 is what they wanted. But
you know they marked up.
Yeah, they obviously marked up. They're making money. So $7,200 for both of them is what they're asking. So they didn't pay.
Did you text that guy and say, hey, how much did Bedrock give you? Because I would have given you more.
No, because he lied. He obviously lied to me and said he was going to get him graded and his family was going to help him pay for it.
This guy was probably waffling. Yeah. He maybe even had family that said that they would pay it, but then they were like, well, not if it's $1,000.
He gave me some sob story. Nah, man, I'm not going to give this guy benefit of the doubt, man. I had a grill in my hands and he took it out of my hands when he paid $50 for it.
He took that grail out of your, like, you were
yeah, and so then I see my guy up there who owns a local comic shop. He has a booth up there, so I go over and I talk to him, and I said, "Hey, man, did you know that so and so sold those books to Bedrock?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "That SOB. He didn't even give me a chance to buy them off of him." And that's why he was upset too. And I said, well, let's think this through. Why didn't he give me or you a shot to buy him? Because both of us would have paid him more than Bedrock, more than likely. And the thought process goes that, one, he felt he burned his bridge with both of us. So one of the things he was doing too, I forgot to mention at the beginning, is he was asking the comic shop owner for the grades. He said, well, and he's a really good grader. Like I mentioned to you before, like I have a good eye for grading, but he has a great eye for grading. He has this big magnifying glass, and they call it the big disappointment because he'll go through the books to make sure, so
nice.
So he was asking him for the grade so he can price it better. And he didn't want to give him the grade. He's like, I'm not going to give you the grade. You grade them. He's like, you're selling them. You grade them. He was, playing the game with him. So he didn't give him the option to even buy them, and he said he probably felt he burned. Well, we were both talking about like, he probably felt he burned his bridge with me and with you, and he couldn't come back to us to try to sell it to us a month, like almost a month down the line. and that's probably why he ended up going there, because he ran out of options. And he's like, no, man, he just, I don't know. He goes, maybe he just thought they were going to give him more, and now he needs the money more. And I go, yeah, I would have still given him the money today. Like that wouldn't have been a big deal. And I left on good terms. Like when I messaged him, the last message was like, hey, man, if you ever decide to change your mind, please let me know. And so after that, man, like it took everything I had not to message him. Hey, man, when you get those back from grading, let me know, man, and I'll pay you full price for them.
Wait, so the end of this story, though, because there's more, right? Because then you went back to Bedrock, and then you talked them down to 42, and you got that Fantastic Four #1, right? You talked them down to 4,200.
No, man. I left it at that, man. I didn't want to. I don't know.
What's the happy ending, though? You got to give me a happy ending.
There's no happy ending, man. There's not all Grail tales are happy ends, man. This is also a PSA to let people know that sometimes you got to walk away, man. Sometimes it's not meant for you. Sometimes that book is meant to be in somebody else's hands.
I'm walking away, man. I don't know. All right. That's a good story, though. It's a sad story, but it's a story nonetheless. So, all right. So that's our Grail tale. Let's see. What else do we got for this podcast? This is the inaugural. This is the first one. So let's see if we can't throw a little bit more out there. Let's talk some spec. So, comic book conspiracy theories. For those listening and don't know. So Jesus and I are both on Instagram. Each of us have comic book related accounts. My comic book account is Omega Red, and it's spelled READ, as in you've read a book. Jesus is laughing a little bit because I often run into people saying Omega Read. Pronounce it however you want, as long as you find me. So that's at Omega Read or Red, and you can find Jesus at guaranteed_comics. So one thing that Jesus knows, but something that I often do, is I come up with what I call comic book conspiracy theories. These are generally, I think these are a little bit more than spec. I mean, it is speculation, but I like to think that comic book conspiracy theories are allowed to be a little bit more outlandish. They can be a little crazier. You don't need to back them up with a whole lot of facts. It can be just kind of, you're just pulling at straws, trying to see what ends up working. And I'll go ahead and I'm just going to toss out one, Jesus. You've known about it for a while. I posted about it a while back, but I still think it's my favorite conspiracy theory I've come up with so far, and that's Onslaught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you ever get your copy? First Onslaught?
Well, I mean, before you posted, I had 2 copies. I have one that's probably, I don't know, I want to say 9.8. Excuse me, 9.8. And then I have a very bad reader copy that I probably want to say it's a 1.5 or something. I don't even know.
Okay. I don't even
that's
know. Not even a reader copy.
Yeah, I don't even know why I have it. I mean, it's not 1.5. I'm exaggerating. It's probably like, I don't know, 6, 7. It just has a lot of spine ticks and stuff. It's been very well read because that's something that I would read when I was getting into comic book collecting in the 90s. So yeah, man, I have it. I don't have it graded. Most of my books when I was collecting were raw, so I didn't really grade my books. I just had them raw. But yeah, I do have it.
See, and that's the difference between you and me. A majority of your books are raw. Right. I mean, you've got graded ones, of course, where if I'm collecting it, it's a graded copy. And especially if I'm trying to put it in the conspiracy collection, which is the name I've dubbed my collection for those listening. But if I'm putting in the conspiracy collection, it's going to be in a CGC slab. So we're talking the first appearance of Onslaught. This is X-Men 53. So what's that? 1996. Mm-hmm. But the So here's the theory here. Here's the conspiracy theory for all of you. So basically, X-Men in the 90s. I loved reading them. I loved the cartoon, when I was a real young child, and then as I got older, started getting into being a teenager, reading the books, was certainly one of my favorite things to do if I could ever actually get out to a comic book store, because at the time, of course, I was relying on somebody for a ride. But the Onslaught storyline was certainly, I like to say you were either a fan of the Onslaught storyline or you absolutely hated it. And I just seem to find there are people that they're just in one of those two camps. I don't know too many people that are in the middle on that. But with Onslaught, one of the things that I remember, and then I started researching the MCU, most speculation right now, if a book is going to explode, it's going to be because the MCU is bringing in that character. And then that book spikes, and you can either, sell your copy you've been sitting on for a while and make some money on it, or it's just nice to have the popular, whatever book is popular at the time. But so I was looking at in the MCU what direction they're headed, and some of it is based off of what we know they're doing, and some of it's just based off of the speculation. So we know Fantastic Four are coming into the mix, Eternals are in the mix. Speculation, we know that Disney, Marvel have the rights to X-Men back, so it seems like a certainty that the X-Men are coming, just a matter of when and how. And I'm trying to think who else is, I guess are the Avengers, the Guardians, all these characters that they're ramping up or using already. And who did all these characters, what villain? Because the Avengers, the Eternals, Fantastic Four, the speculation of Adam Warlock, all of these characters, is there any villain that they all fought all at the same time in the same storyline? And I could only come up with one. And if you're listening out there and you're like, nope, there's another one, you let me know. All I could find is Onslaught. If you want to know who the X-Men, who the Avengers, who the Fantastic Four, all of them, who did they all have to come together to defeat? Right? It wasn't Galactus. It wasn't Kang. It wasn't Thanos. It was
Mephisto.
It definitely wasn't Mephisto. He would not require that much attention. It was Onslaught. Onslaught was the one that took all of those characters to do. So I was like, all right, well, that seems kind of important, right? Now, this might be 10 years down the road, right? Because we know we've got Kang, right? For for those, sorry, spoilers, for those who haven't caught up on Loki. But we know we've got Kang, and probably for the foreseeable future, but who comes after? Right? When they got all these people left, I just thought that it made sense. And one thing, a character that a lot of people are speculating about, Fantastic Four have had a few movies already, some better than others, most actually terrible. But Franklin Richards, the son of Reed and Sue, Franklin Richards has been a popular character. People are collecting, Fantastic Four Annual 6, the first appearance of Franklin Richards and Annihilus, right?
That's right, yeah.
Annihilus. Well, everybody's saying, Franklin Richards hasn't been explored yet. He's a great character. They got to bring him in. Franklin Richards is the linchpin to defeating Onslaught. He is the one that ends up, turning the tide to defeat Onslaught. And I'm like, well, if you're in the camp of specking on Franklin Richards, you've got to be in the Onslaught camp, So I put all these pieces together, and that kind of leads me to, that's my comic book conspiracy theory for this, I guess for this inaugural episode is, I think that there's reason to believe that Onslaught could be in the mix down the road. It's a fun character that brought all of our heroes together. And if we know anything from what the MCU did with Thanos and the Infinity War and Endgame, is people love to see all of the heroes band together to defeat one villain. And I don't know if there's a more epic opportunity than with Onslaught, with all the characters we know they're bringing in. So that's what a comic book conspiracy theory sounds like. I don't know what Onslaught's first appearance is going for right now. I've got a 9.8 white pages copy that I got for, I got it, I can't remember, this probably would have been March. It's been, almost 5 or 6 months now since I got it, but I got it for under $100 in a 9.8. And I know it's gone up a bit since then, but if you're out there and you're a comic book collector and you're looking for a book maybe to spec on, to store away in your closet for the next 10 years or so, maybe the first Onslaught might not be a bad idea.
So this is also another thing that we're gonna do or that we do is I think we're believers in Marvel using the comic books as a way to ease some characters back into the consciousness of their fan base. And one of the reasons why Onslaught popped again after you bought it in March, because it popped in May, is because in May he came out, or he was teased in Way of X #2, which is the new X-Men comic book series. So yeah, man, I agree with you. I like Onslaught. I'm in the camp that likes Onslaught. I just think it's a cool concept of who and what he is and how he was made. And you got to think that Marvel's going to be doing something different from what's been done in the past with X-Men. So who is different and what's different? They also aren't going to maybe go too far. I think Phoenix is somebody that's a character that they want, or the people want to see more of. And didn't she have something to do with the Onslaught story as well, I think?
Yeah, very much so. But the thing about Phoenix was that, I guess Phoenix has already been used a little bit as well in the previous X-Men movies.
Yeah,
and
even recently.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that's I don't know if that's a selling point for Disney, right? I think Disney's trying to not tread on what the old movies have done. And they're trying to reinvent the characters, or they're trying to reinvent what the stories are being told. And I think that makes it difficult for when fans are clamoring for a new Wolverine. Everybody wants Wolverine. You can't do X-Men without him. But how do you do Wolverine when the previous Wolverine was absolutely the best thing that Fox did with the X-Men, right? Hugh Jackman and the movies that they did. Not that all of them were good. X-Men Origin Wolverine was not a great movie, although the opening was absolutely epic. The opening of that movie is still it that slaps like just hardcore. It's so good. So anyway, but I completely agree. I do think that Marvel is using their comic books to ease characters back in, and Marvel is using their comic books to put focus back on looking at characters that are getting their spotlight, like Shang-Chi. He's got his own book series now. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're going to start seeing characters that are being highlighted in the MCU. Maybe it's a comic book conspiracy theory, maybe not, but I like to think that they are doing a little bit of foreshadowing, right? They're dipping their toes, seeing how people react to a character in the comics. And if things go well, they might end up in the MCU. So Man-Thing recently, in the last few months, for some reason, the MCU, or excuse me, Marvel Comics has been injecting Man-Thing into so many books. Like you walk in a store and you're like, what's up with Man-Thing? Why are they injecting Man-Thing suddenly into all? I mean, since when are they using this character? And this could be in reaction to Swamp Thing. You know, Swamp Thing's. I feel like Swamp Thing's been a pretty consistent character for DC for years now. I remember Swamp Thing New 52 was fantastic.
Even the new one.
I read the Scott Snyder stuff back for the New 52, but after Scott Snyder dropped off, I kind of dropped off on reading that one. But just in general, I thought that it was strange that Man-Thing was making so many, like he has so many crossovers. Man-Thing with Spider-Man, Man-Thing with the Avengers. Like there's crossovers like crazy with Man-Thing. So read into that what you want. Maybe that means that Man-Thing is also going to be making an MCU appearance, or maybe Marvel is just seeing how people react to the storylines that they're doing in the comics, seeing if anything takes hold, if anything gets popular, and if it does, maybe that means that Man-Thing has some life expectancy within the MCU. So take that for what it's worth. So one thing that we're going to be looking for as well is, you heard Jesùs give his Grail Tale. Some Grail Tales are good, some are not so good, but we want to know your story. We want you to email us your story. We're going to have some guests. We're going to invite people to be on to tell their story. But email us. You can hit us up at spectalespodcast@gmail.com. And that's spec, SPECTALES podcast@gmail.com. No spaces or underscores or anything like that. And tell us what your story is. Tell us your Grail Tale. It can be as long-winded or as short as you want. And, we'll read some emails on the, in the recording. I want to say on the air, we're not live, but we'll read them. And you know what? If you've got such an epic story that just can't be contained in an email, we'll invite some people on. We want to hear people tell the stories. And that's like, you're going to hear it said multiple times. Every comic book has a story, and so does every collector. And we're kind of here to tell those tales. What else you got, Jesùs, before we close out?
Not a whole lot, man. Just really excited about this. Real quick on your 9.8s, last sold for $225, $201, and $399 on that Onslaught. So it's kind of
$399.
Yeah, that one was buy it now, $399. So
somebody wanted it.
Yeah,
how that works.
Yeah, so I mean, $225. I would say anything above $200 is kind of where it's at right now.
Okay. So if you can get it for under $200, you got a little bit of a deal there.
Yeah, or if you want to buy a raw, the high grade raws are going for about $40 to $50, and try to your chance at slabbing it and getting it at 9.8 on your own.
Which is not that old of a book. So, I mean, there's a reasonably high chance that you could do that depending on how well you can eyeball it on eBay, right? Or if you can find it elsewhere.
At your local comic shop.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, for those of you who made it through the first episode, thanks for joining us. And thanks for finding us. Tell your friends, reach out to us. You can also find us on Instagram. And you can find us on Instagram at spec_tales_podcast. So you can find us on there. Give us a follow, reach out, tell us your tales. If you've got a comic book conspiracy theory and you're willing to share with us, let us know. We'll give you credit when we're recording. Otherwise, like I said, thanks for listening, and hope you join us again soon.